Second tutorial on Inkscape, we're going to be looking at working with paths and objects. See a link in the description if you haven't seen the first lesson. So we're going to look at how we can work with groups of objects, sort of select objects individually or multiple objects at the same time so we can group or then ungroup them. We'll also be looking at how we might align and distribute them around the page. Then we're going to look at combining paths by applying operations such as the union, difference and intersection to combine shapes. Okay, I'm just going to switch over to Inkscape and we'll get started. First of all, a quick reminder of some of the things we did in the last lesson. I'm just going to grab a rectangle object here. Let's grab an ellipse and a polygon. So these were some of the shapes that we looked at the last time. Inside of Inkscape, these are really objects and they have their own properties. In order to get to their own properties, you need to double click and you'll see the white dots around them, and you'll be able to do things like make rounded corners. You will be able to double click and do things like make arcs and other shapes with ellipses. And if you are working with polygons, you'll be able to do things like double click to get back to that white icons there, go in and adapt a number of sides that you've got. Okay, you may have seen that I was switching there and between the different modes and things. First of all with a double click, and then use the black selection tool at the top there, the object selection tool. That would give me these handles, and then when I click one more time it would give me the second mode that allows me to rotate and skew these objects. However, what we can do is we can select multiple objects at the same time. So with the black select tool there being used, if I hold down the shift key, I can then select multiple objects at the same time and move them around. If I click away, so I'm selecting none, I can draw a box around them, and that will allow me to select multiple kind of objects. And then from this I can group all of these objects together. The quickest and easiest way to do that is just to use Control G, and now they act as kind of one object. And if you were to change the path on them, they will all change. Sorry, the fill on them, they will all change, and they're now kind of working like one big sort of object. You can also do that over here. We can use there's some shortcuts here on the side to do different things here, like sort of grouping and ungrouping. So here's the tool to ungroup them, and now I'd be back to working with individual objects. So your first task that you need to do in your workbooks is to go away and see if you can create an eye type object here by obviously drawing 3 ellipses and grouping those all together to make an individual eye. And then if you could make a clone of that, or if you could copy it, Control D to make a copy of that one. And then if you could ungroup them and go in and see if you can change the fill of just one of the elements of that. Okay, if you want to pause the video now and go ahead and do those tasks. So the next thing we're going to look at is if we have multiple objects on the page, how can we distribute them or align them in different ways? So we may want to sort of have all of the shapes be aligned to the left of the page or the left of a particular object, or we might want to distribute these shapes so that they're an equal distance away from each other horizontally or vertically. Let's jump over to Inkscape and show you what I mean. Just have one image here. So what I'm going to do is put it in the middle of the screen, and I'm going to use Control D to duplicate it a few times. Notice when I press Control D though, it duplicated on top of itself. So it may appear at first when you use Control D that nothing has actually happened. But now we've got 4 shapes. Or 5 shapes in fact. I'm going to sort of just place them fairly randomly on the page here. And what I'd like to do is first of all look at how I could maybe align them all to this sort of edge, to the sort of furthest edge over here. couple of different ways we can get to the tools to do this, but in this case I'm going to show you how you bring up the panels. If we go to object, because these are objects we're working with, and we want to look at aligning and distributing them. Pops up a new panel next to the fill and stroke panel we've been used to using that we can switch between, and here we have different sort of tools that we can pick on to do our alignment and distribution, and then you can have a little look at some of the other features that are down here. Let's look at alignment first of all. So we need to select the objects that we wish to align, so I'm going to simply draw a box around them, and notice that it says the alignment is going to be relative to the selection area. So basically it's going to be the box that we've sort of drawn around here is where it's going to align to. So if we are to click on left, it's going to jump across to the left. If we go to the center, well, that area now, we're going to do that actually because they're all centered at that point, aren't they? But now if we were to do that, and they'll all just jump to the center, so do that with a Control Z, and then we could align them to the right over there like so. Okay, and we could also do that though, instead of to a particular object, we've got some different choices here, maybe to the last first selected or the biggest and smallest objects. Probably the most useful one would maybe be to the page. So again, if I draw a box around all of these, got them all selected, and now they're going to jump all the way across to the, if I left align to the edge of the page, or from here to the center of the page, or to the right of the page, like so. Okay, that's the basics of alignment, and you can play around. Obviously I was doing vertical alignment here. The same thing would sort of happen if we wanted to do these horizontally. Let's kind of space them out a little bit here, and the same thing, but this time let's use the selection area and bring them all up in line with each other at the top there. Okay, they were the alignment sort of ideas, but here, what about if I wanted them, all of these objects to be, well, let's imagine I want them to be working like bullet points, so they're all, first of all, aligned over to the left, but then I want them to be equally distributed in terms of space. So let's just grab them, align them all to the, oops, I didn't get all of them there, let's grab all of them, align them all to the left, and I'm going to make these bullet points, I want them to be relative to the page, and I'm going to distribute them so that their centers, you get some choices if it's the top, the bottom, and I want their centers to be an equidistance away from each other. Now, what I would probably want is if I was to move them to the top and the bottom of the page there, like this. Let's try this again. Now what it's going to do is when I do that, it is going to actually move them to those bigger sort of distances apart from I mis-selected that last one again. Let's try that one more time. I'm going to drag all box around all of them and align them all equidistant apart. Let's go to the left as well, to the left of the page, and that might be an effect that we're after. So that was the align and distribute. There's some other tools here that allows you to sort of remove overlaps and things. Perhaps if you have a big cluster of things, it will automatically move them all away from each other, but I'll let you have a little play with those. What I'd like you to do now then is go into your workbooks, into Teams, and see if you can complete this task. It's to create a series of shapes like I just did, but this time we want to be aligned as shown in there. Once you've completed that, if you could then copy your completed image into your Teams workbook. The next thing that we're going to look at is how we can use Inkscape to combine shapes and paths. We're going to look at how we do that with unions, difference, and intersections. You may have come across these words before if you've in maths looking at things like Venn diagrams, and the meanings are the same. So the first one we're going to look at is the union, and a union is where everything that you have that you're combining, all of it is included. Let me show you what I mean by that in Inkscape. So as you can see here, we've got three shapes. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to make sure that they overlap each other, like so. And when we select all of them, I'm now going to say that I want to use the path tools here to combine these shapes to make a union, which is where all of the shapes contribute to the overall shape we're making. And that's what we'd end up with. So nice and easy. I just undo that one to show you again if we've got shapes. And we can have other shapes. Select all of these items. Then it's going to make one shape that is a union of all of the pieces that are in there. Okay, now it's your turn to have a go. There's two tasks for you to try and do here, and take screenshots and pop them into your Teams workbook. The first one is to try and make a letter. So if you can look at that, you can see hopefully that it's made up of three rectangles and a union between them. And the next task is to create this shape. Okay, so an ellipse obviously, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rectangles that have been moved around like so. Okay, so pause the video now and go and have a go at trying to complete those two activities. So we're going to have a look at how we combine shapes and paths again, but this time combining them using the difference tool. In essence, I think of this as being like a little bit like a cake cutter, where you've got two shapes and one of them is going to cut a piece out of the other one. It's the difference between the two, or subtraction, the difference between the two of them. Let's just pop over to Inkscape and I'll show you what I mean again. So once again, here I am. I have three shapes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap one shape over the top of the other, and then I'm going to select both of those shapes, and I'm going to go up to the path tools here, and I am going to choose difference. And as I say, it's like the top one is acting like a cutter on the other one. It's finding the difference between them by removing part of the other one. And you can make lots of nice effects and things, perhaps an apple core or something, using this kind of tool. So that is the difference tool. Again, we've got a couple of activities for you to try to reproduce these shapes. There is the first one, and here is the second one, where we're using the difference tool to remove shapes from other shapes. That one's is quite easy. This one requires a little bit of thought. You've got to really think about what shapes are in here in order to do this. Okay, good luck. I'll let you go on and go to Inkscape, try and create those two shapes and put your finished work into Teams, please. And the final way of combining shapes we're going to look at is using the intersection operator on the shapes. And as it suggests, an intersection is a place where things join together. Let's have a look at what that might look like in Inkscape. See, I've got my three shapes again here. I've turned down the opacity on the top two to help us try and see what's happening with these shapes when we do this one. So the opacity down the bottom here, you can sort of change how opaque objects are. So just so we can see through them, I've changed that. So let's have a little look. What does this mean? So if I was to make these two shapes cross over, we're only going to get the points where they are joined together, where both shapes are appearing. So that's going to be this kind of section in here. Let's just select both of those. That one out of the way. Select both of those shapes and go to the path and intersection operator, and there we go. You can see we've only got the point where they crossed over, and we could keep doing that to sort of make some interesting shapes. I do the same again and hold down the shift key to multi-select, and I do path and intersection operator. You can see there what we're kind of left with is just again the bits that were in the middle. Again, we have some tasks for you to try and complete using these tools. So in this case, using the intersection tool, create the shape over here using a 5-corner star and a rectangle as the intersection. I'll let you see if you can work out how you do that one. And then we've got a more complex one to try next. So this one says create this shape using a circle, a 7-corner star and a triangle, and then use an intersection to try and combine them. Now if you kind of look at these a little bit, you can see there is a sort of triangle here, and actually there's bits of the star sort of here that have been chopped off some of the legs, the ends of the sort of star points there, using where we might have placed a circle. I'll leave you to have a go at that one. It's quite a tough one to do, so well done if you managed to achieve that. And so once again, back to you onto Inkscape, see if we can create those two images that were there. You've just learned it's a good idea to go away and practice. I've just searched here for simple vector images illustrations on Google Images here. We've got lots of good ideas of images that you could try and create for yourself if you've got time. Hope you've enjoyed and learned some new things watching this video. Goodbye.